Chögyam Trungpa was born at a very young age in 1939 in what was then Tibet and what is now disgruntled West China. He was discovered to be the 11th incarnation of some guy and so became a fairly prominent Buddhist monk. In 1951 the Chinese annexed Tibet, and in 1959 the Tibetans tried to de-annex themselves unsuccessfully, so Chögyam, the Dalai Lama, and a bunch of their pals fled to India. From there he went to Oxford and then to America, where he founded a few temples and a university, presumably where New Agers come to major in group hugs and daisy weaving. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche is often cited as an example of what is often called the crazy wisdom tradition, though since crazy is the word I used to describe my crazy Uncle Mitch, perhaps it would be more accurate to describe Trungpa as possessing batshit insane wisdom. He lived his life with the intent to defy his followers' expectations of what a spiritual teacher should be, therefore causing them to examine their long-held assumptions about life and the rest of it. It is also equally possible that he just really liked to fuck with hippies, in which case I'm a Buddhist now. An example of crazy wisdom might be taking something held as sacred, such as the 5 precepts of Buddhism, one of which is to not drink anything fermented, and perhaps turn it on its head slightly. Trungpa, of course, was known to drink like a dehydrated fish, but then give lucid Dharma talks that even his fellow Buddhist monks would claim were inspiring. Another example of crazy wisdom is how in the 70s he had some of his American hippie students form what he called the Vajra Guard, a paramilitary organization whose purpose was to teach Vietnam-era hippies that there was value in structure and discipline in facing what they feared and despised most, though personally I would have made them dress up like Richard Nixon. Though since he was known to keep beautiful women around as his servants, it's also possible that Trungpa was amassing his own army because he was a James Bond villain. While in America, Trungpa wrote one of his most popular books, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, about which I will now go into a long and unnecessarily glib tangent. When we think of materialism, we usually think of physical goods or consumerism. Consumerism is, of course, when white people buy things they don't need, such as Marxist merchandise, without a hint of irony. This is not the same thing as spiritual materialism, though perhaps consumerism could be seen as a byproduct. Spiritual materialism is the result of a widespread, unspoken belief that we as human beings are severely lacking in something. Perhaps the best way to understand spiritual materialism is to understand its opposite, which is called, I don't know actually. Okayness, I'm fine-tude, I complain a lot, but things really ain't so bad. Illity. Maybe it's not good to look at its opposite, because spiritual materialism is so rampant it affects you, me, and damn near everyone to such an extent that it has shaped our language so that there really aren't ways to describe what spiritual materialism isn't. And when there are, they tend to be stupid, cutesy, largely discrediting words like swell, okie day, and hunky-dory. Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche described 3 different types of spiritual materialism. He called these 3 categories the lords of materialism, because Tibetan Buddhists know we're more likely to listen to them if they make religion sound like Mortal Kombat. The first lord of materialism is the lord of form. The lord of form is the preoccupation with how we perceive the physical world. It is important to note that this is not the same thing as the physical world itself. The realm of form is how we manipulate our ideas about the outside world until it becomes something safe, controllable, what Trungpa calls a cocoon. An example of this might be every home security system commercial ever where the crowbar-wielding loony decides to not use your teenage daughter's skull as a chafing dish because of a box with some blinking lights on the wall. What companies are trying to sell you is not a Jeffrey Dahmer-proof home, but rather a sense of security or peace of mind. The lord of speech could be called the lord of our ideas about how things should be, or maybe psychological materialism. Some examples might be, I'm a man, so I can't cry. I'm a hippie, so I don't wear khaki and march a lot. I'm a Republican, so I can't accept the fundamental tenets of science. But it comes down to more than ideology. It is the assumption that some belief will magically fix what we or the universe is lacking. I think it was Inspector Gadget who said, "Isms in my opinion are not good. A person should not believe in an ism. He should believe in himself." The lord of mind is the tendency to cling to states of mind. This can be from altered states of consciousness from drugs, meditative practices, or having your cousin Dwayne pick you up and shake you while you hold your breath until the room spins. This can also more specifically refer to bliss that occurs in the meditative state, in that after experiencing said bliss one may be tempted to view it as a cure for suffering, when in actuality, since it is not permanent, chasing it futilely only ultimately increases suffering. Chögyam Trungpa emphasized faith in what he called a person's basic goodness. Goodness here does not indicate, hey, maybe Hitler was just misunderstood, but rather simply there is nothing inherently broken or lacking in your life. Developing confidence in this fact means you'll start to find less things and ideas to fill the void in your life as you gradually begin to realize that there isn't a hole to begin with. Chögyam Trungpa went on to hang with some beats, read some more stuff, develop a secular meditation practice, and may or may not have done a bunch of controversial things until his death in 1987, either from complications leading to heart failure or being kicked into a vat of acid by Roger Moore.